The wind was dry as bone when the auction bell rang. The small town of Dust Creek gathered under the blazing sun, faces hidden beneath hats and shadows. A girl stood on the wooden stage, barefoot, trembling, her hair tangled by wind and shame. Her name was Clara, 19 years old. Her father had died of fever last winter. Her mother taken by hunger soon after. No kin, no money, no mercy. Only an old debt and a man with a gavel who called her a bride lot. $3 to start, the auctioneer barked, voice cracking in the heat. A strong young lady, pure and obedient, the crowd murmured. Some men laughed. Most turned away. $3 was too much for another mouth to feed, even a young one. Then a voice came from the back, calm, rough. $3, said the cowboy. Every head turned. He stood tall, sun-browned, eyes shadowed beneath a wide-brimmed hat. Elias Boone, a rancher who kept to himself on the far edge of the valley. Folks called him the Ghost Rider, because he spoke little and rode alone. He stepped forward, dropped $3 silver onto the stage, and nodded once. The gavel hit. Sold. Clara didn't move when they untied her wrists. Her eyes lifted only once, and to the man who had bought her, and she felt a chill despite the heat. His face was unreadable. No cruelty, no pity, just silence. They left town before sundown. The trail home was long and cruel. Dust swirled in their faces, horses kicking up the ghosts of miles behind them. Clara rode side saddle, stiff as wood, clutching the reins like a lifeline. Elias didn't speak a word till they reached the ridge. "You can ride," he said at last, voice deep, measured. "That's good." She didn't answer. He didn't press her. They rode on. By nightfall they reached his ranch, a lonely stretch of land hemmed by fences and sagebrush, a cabin crouched beneath the stars. He helped her down, slow and careful, not touching her more than he had to. "You'll sleep in the house," he said quietly. "There's a room. I'll stay in the barn." Clara blinked, confused. "But aren't I supposed to?" Her voice broke. He looked at her, eyes soft for the first time. "You're not supposed to do anything. Eat, rest, you're safe here." She didn't believe him, not at first. Men didn't buy women to keep them safe. But he walked away before she could speak again, leaving her with a plate of beans and a silence that felt almost gentle. Days turned into weeks. Elias worked from dawn to dark, mending fences, branding cattle, breaking colts. Clara cooked, cleaned, learned the rhythm of the ranch. She still flinched when he came near. But he never raised his hand, never raised his voice. Sometimes in the evenings he'd sit on the porch strumming a broken guitar. She'd listen from the doorway unseen. The music was rough, sad, like the sound of someone who'd lost too much and never found the words to grieve. One night she spoke. "Why did you buy me?" He looked up from the guitar, fingers still. "You needed saving," he said simply. "That's not what men do," she whispered. He half smiled. "Then maybe I ain't a man like the rest." She didn't answer, but something shifted inside her, a quiet spark where fear had lived. Autumn came early. The nights grew cold. One morning, Clara found a wounded colt tangled in barbed wire near the creek. She called for Elias, voice shaking. He came running, knelt beside the animal, his hands steady, even as blood slicked the ground. "Hold him," he said. "Keep him still." She did, tears in her eyes as Elias worked with his knife, freeing the wire strand by strand. When the colt finally staggered up, limping but alive, she saw Elias's hands trembling. "You're bleeding," she gasped. He shrugged. Better me than him. Something cracked open in her chest. She didn't know what to call it, gratitude maybe, or the beginning of trust. That night she found him outside by the corral, wrapping his hand with a strip of cloth. Moonlight silvered the dust in his hair. She stepped closer. "You should have let me help," she said softly. He looked up. "Didn't want you near the blood." "I've seen worse," she murmured. He studied her a moment. "You shouldn't have." They stood in silence, the desert wind whispering through the grass. Then, without thinking, she reached for his hand and tied the cloth tighter. His skin was warm, rough from work. He didn't pull away. "Thank you," he said, almost a whisper. "For what?" "For seeing me," her breath caught. He smiled, small, tired, real. For the first time since she'd come, she smiled back. Winter rolled in hard. Snow dusted the plains, turning the world to white silence. Elias fell ill with fever, days of shivering and coughing that rattled his bones. Clara nursed him through it, feeding him broth, cooling his brow with wet cloths. He muttered in dreams, names she didn't know. Once she heard him whisper, "Sarah, I'm sorry." When he finally woke, weak but alive, she asked, "Who's Sarah?" He looked away. "My wife was. She and our boy died 3 winters ago. Fever took him before I could get help." Clara's heart ached. She hadn't known he'd carried ghosts too. "I'm sorry," she whispered. He nodded. "Guess we both lost more than we deserved." From that day, something changed between them. The walls fell, slow but sure. He taught her to ride the open range, to shoot a rifle, to laugh again. She sang sometimes while she worked, soft, sweet songs her mother had taught her. And Elias would pause to listen, eyes distant, as if the sound pulled light back into his world. Spring thawed the land and the grief between them. One morning he brought her a small wooden box carved by hand. Inside lay a ribbon, faded blue. "It was Sarah's," he said. "You don't have to wear it. Just thought you might want something pretty." Clara's throat tightened. "Why are you so kind to me?" He took a breath. "Because I know what it's like to be bought and sold by life. You didn't choose any of this. Least I can do is give you a choice now." "What choice?" "Stay or go," he said quietly. "Spring's come. You're free." The word hit her like a shot. Free, she could leave. Go anywhere. But when she looked at him, the man who'd never touched her without permission, who'd mended her spirit as he mended fences, her chest hurt in a way she didn't understand. "I'll think about it," she whispered. He nodded, though his eyes betrayed something like heartbreak. Days passed. She packed a small bundle, stared at the horizon, at the road that led away from Dust Creek. But every time she tried to imagine walking it, her feet stayed still. The ranch wasn't just a place now, it was quiet safety, a heartbeat she'd learned to trust. One evening, as the sun bled gold over the hills, Elias came to her with a horse saddled. "You made your choice?" he asked softly. She swallowed hard. "I did." He nodded once, trying to smile. "Then I'll ride you as far as the ridge." But she didn't take the reins. Instead, she stepped closer, trembling. "My choice," she said, voice breaking, "is to stay." He froze. For a long moment, neither spoke. The wind hummed low between them. Then he stepped forward, slow, careful, and reached for her hand. "You sure?" he asked. She nodded, tears glimmering. "I've been alone all my life. Till you." His fingers brushed her cheek, rough and gentle all at once. "Clara?" She smiled through tears. "You don't have to say anything," but he did. "Then I will." And before she could breathe, the cowboy sank to one knee in the dirt. That's when she screamed. It wasn't fear. It was everything, and shock, grief, joy all tangled in one sound. The echo of every pain she'd buried. He looked up at her, startled, heart pounding. "I ain't asking because I own you," he said hoarsely. "I'm asking because I love you." Her hands flew to her mouth, sobs breaking loose. She dropped to her knees with him, dust clouding around them, and whispered, "I thought no one could ever love me again." He pulled her close, careful like she might break. "You were never broken," he murmured. "Just waiting to be seen." The wedding was small. Just them, a preacher from town and the wind carrying wildflowers across the field. She wore Sarah's blue ribbon in her hair. He wore his old hat, polished for once. When the preacher asked if he took her hand, Elias smiled. That quiet, steady smile that had saved her once before. "I do." When she answered, her voice shook. "I do too." Afterward, they stood on the porch, the sky melting into dusk. The world was quiet but alive. Coyotes singing far off, stars waking above. Elias wrapped his arm around her shoulders. $3, he said with a low chuckle. "That's what they said you were worth." She smiled up at him. "Guess they were wrong." He kissed her forehead. "Worth every lifetime I've got left." Years passed. The ranch grew with the seasons. Clara filled it with laughter, warmth, and wildflowers. Elias built her a porch swing, and on summer nights they'd sit together watching the horizon fade to blue. Sometimes she'd rest her head against his shoulder and whisper, "You still think you bought me?" He'd laugh. "No, ma'am. You bought me, heart and soul." Their first child was born in spring, a girl with eyes like dawn and a cry that sounded like hope. Elias held her close, whispering promises into her tiny ear. Clara watched, tears shining. "Look at you," she said softly. The ghostwriter tamed. He smiled, eyes glistening. "No, just finally home, and every year." When the wind carried dust from the town where it all began, Clara would think back to that stage, to the girl she was, trembling in the heat, And the man who'd spent $3 not to own her but to free her. She'd take his hand, feel the roughness of the years and whisper, "You saved me." And he'd always answer, "No, darling. You saved me first."